Hey everybody, welcome to Assignment 5 from Unit 5 in Global Commerce. Tonight we have pages 682 through 685 to read, and only questions 25 through 27. This is your last assignment in this unit, so celebrate the way this guy is. I don't know why he is, but he's very excited about something. Definitions, there's actually more of these than questions. There are 6. First one is to consolidate, which is to combine or strengthen, and I guess transforming from a bunch of small robots to form Devastator was so cool in 1986. It still is today. I don't care what anyone says. Next is ambition, which is to have a desire to succeed. And this dog has a desire to succeed, just not to go over the hurdle, but he did get his treat nonetheless. Next is infusion. We're going to infuse this gentleman here with that, and he's not done. That wasn't a good choice. We're going to infuse something new into his body. It's funnier the more often you watch it. Next is enterprise, and here we have this little guy going off to work, which is just referring to a business idea or an investment. That is on page 684. Next, windfall is unexpected good fortune, also on page 684, and this guy has great fortune. Not because of that, but because of this one. He even got his sunglasses on still. Instead of exchanging insurance information, rides off into the sunset to ping-pong off of another vehicle. Lastly, we have vigorous, which means to be strong and healthy, anything to be strong and healthy. And here we have Sheldon trying to stretch and really not doing as good of a job as Penny, although his arms are straight. So we'll catch you back here on page 682, starting at silver and global commerce. Even more than the spice trade of Eurasia, it was the silver trade that gave birth to a genuinely global network of exchange. As one historian put it, silver went round the world and made the world go round. The mid-16th century discovery of enormously rich silver deposits in Bolivia and simultaneously in Japan suddenly provided a vastly increased supply of that precious metal. Spanish America alone produced perhaps 85% of the world's silver during the early modern era. Spain's sole Asian colony, the Philippines, provided a critical link in this emerging network of global commerce. Manila, the colonial capital of the Philippines, was the destination of annual Spanish shipments of silver, which were drawn from the rich mines of Bolivia, transported initially to Acapulco in Mexico, and from there shipped across the Pacific to the Philippines. This trade was the first direct and sustained link between the Americas and Asia, and it initiated a web of Pacific commerce that grew steadily over the centuries. At the heart of that Pacific web and of early modern global commerce generally was China's huge economy, and especially its growing demand for silver. In the 1570s, Chinese authorities consolidated, and highlight that word, consolidated, a variety of tax levies into a single tax, which its huge population was now required to pay in silver. This sudden new demand for the white metal caused its value to skyrocket. It meant that foreigners with silver could now purchase far more of China's silks and porcelains than before. This demand set silver in motion around the world, with the bulk of the world's silver supply winding up in China and much of the rest elsewhere in Asia. The routes and by which the silver drain operated were numerous. Chinese, Portuguese, and Dutch traders flocked to Manila to sell Chinese goods in exchange for silver. European ships carried Japanese silver to China. Much of the silver shipped across the Atlantic to Spain was spent in Europe generally and then used to pay for the Asian goods that the French, British, and Dutch so greatly desired. Silver paid for some African slaves and for spices in Southeast Asia. The standard Spanish coin, known as a piece of 8, was used by merchants in North America, Europe, India, Russia, and West Africa as a medium of exchange. By 1600, it circulated widely in southern China. A Portuguese merchant in 1621 noted that silver wanders throughout all the world before flocking to China, where it remains as its natural center. In its global journeys, silver transformed much that it touched. At the world's largest silver mine in what is now Bolivia, the city of Potosi arose from a barren landscape high in the Andes, a 10-mile or 10-week mule trip from Lima. New people arise by the hour, attracted by the smell of silver, commented a Spanish observer in the 1570s. With 160,000 people, Potosi became the largest city in the Americas and equivalent in size to London, Amsterdam, or Seville. Its wealthy European elite lived in luxury, with all the goods of Europe and Asia at their disposal. Meanwhile, the city's Native American miners worked in conditions so horrendous that some families held funeral services for men drafted to work the mines. One Spanish priest referred to Potosi as a portrait of hell, and if you look on the bottom right corner here, you can see that what the Spanish priest was referring to. In Spain itself, which was the initial destination for much of Latin America's silver, the precious metal vastly enriched the crown, making Spain the envy of its European rivals during the 16th century. Spanish rulers could now pursue military and political ambitions, highlight that word, ambitions, in both Europe and the Americas far beyond the country's own resource base. New World mines, concluded one scholar, supported the Spanish Empire. Nonetheless, this vast infusion, and highlight that word, infusion, of wealth did not fundamentally transform the Spanish economy because it generated more inflation of prices than real economic growth. A rigid economy laced with monopolies and regulations, an aristocratic class that preferred leisure to enterprise, highlight that word, enterprise, and a crusading insistence on religious uniformity all prevented the Spanish from using their silver windfall, and highlight that word, windfall, in a productive fashion. When the value of silver dropped in the early 17th century, Spain lost its earlier position as the dominant Western European power. Finally, some questions. Number 25. What prevented Spain from using its silver windfall in a productive way? Stop and think, and respond. Yeah, that's right. It's because their aristocrats, meaning the rich class, preferred to spend it on leisure instead of business opportunities. That and religious uniformity, all that always gets in the way. Moving on, continuing on page 684. Japan, another major source of silver production in the 16th century, did better. Its military rulers, the Tokugawa shoguns, used silver-generated profits to defeat hundreds of rival feudal lords and to unify the country. Unlike their Spanish counterparts, the shoguns allied with the country's vigorous, and highlight that word, vigorous, merchant class to develop a market-based economy and to invest heavily in agricultural and industrial enterprises. Japanese state and local authorities acted vigorously to protect and renew Japan's dwindling forests, while millions of families in the 18th century took steps to have fewer children by practicing late marriages, contraception, abortion, and infanticide. The outcome was the dramatic slowing of Japan's population growth, the easing of an impending ecological crisis, and a flourishing, highly commercialized economy. These were foundations for Japan's remarkable 19th century industrial revolution. Number 26. Prove that Japan, another major source of silver production, did better than Spain in silver trade. Stop and think, and respond. Yeah, that's right. Here's the proof. Japan tried to protect and renew their forests that were shrinking, and millions of families took steps to ensure that they had fewer children. Some of the methods were perhaps cruel in your eyes, but those were two things that they did to be better than Spain. Continuing on. In China, silver deepened the already substantial commercialization of the country's economy. In order to obtain the silver needed to pay their taxes, more and more people had to sell something, either their labor or their products. Communities that devoted themselves to growing mulberry trees on which silkworms fed had to buy their rice from other regions. Thus, the Chinese economy became more regionally specialized. Particularly in southern China, this surging economic growth resulted in the loss of about half of the area's forest cover as more and more land was devoted to cash crops. No Japanese-style conservation program emerged to address this growing problem. An 18th century Chinese poet, Wang Dui, gave voice to the fears that this ecological transformation wrought. Rarer too their timber grew, and rarer still and rarer, as the hills resembled heads now shaven clean of hair. For the first time, too, moreover, they felt an anxious mood, that all their daily logging might not furnish them with fuel. And question number 27. How did silver deepen China's commercialization of their economy? Stop and think, and respond. Yeah, that's right. A really short answer here. They either had to sell their labor, meaning they had to work, or they had to sell their products. That's all you need to have there. Examples of that are just that they needed to have mulberry trees for silkworms to feed on, but they had to get their rice from other regions because they weren't actively producing it. And that was the last question, and I know you probably won't stick around to read the last paragraph here at the bottom of 684, but we are almost done, and perhaps it will help. So right after the quote from the Chinese poet, we'll resume. The bottom of page 684. China's role in the silver trade is a useful reminder of Asian centrality in the world economy of the early modern age. Its large and prosperous population, increasingly operating within a silver-based economy, fueled global commerce, vastly increasing the quantity of goods exchanged and the geographic range of the world. Despite their obvious physical presence in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, economically speaking, Europeans were essentially middlemen, funneling American silver to Asia and competing with one another for a place in the rich markets of the East. The productivity of the Chinese economy was evident in Spanish America, where cheap and well-made Chinese goods easily outsold those of Spain. In 1594, the Spanish viceroy of Peru observed that a man can clothe his wife in Chinese silks for 25 pesos, whereas he could not provide her with clothing of Spanish silks with 200 pesos. Indian cotton textiles likewise outsold European woolen or linen textiles in the 17th century to such an extent that French laws in 1717 prohibited the wearing of Indian cotton or Chinese silk clothing as a means of protecting the French industry. And that's all, kiddos. Nice job. Good luck on this, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.